We will now begin our discussion of exercise 12-10, dropping or retaining a segment, which is on page 560. This exercise involves the Dexter Products Company, which manufactures and sells a number of items, including an overnight case. The company's been experiencing losses on the overnight case for some time now, and you can see the contribution format income statement on page 560, which shows that for the quarter ended June 30th, Dexter has a $70,000 net operating loss on their overnight case product line. Top of 561 tells us that discontinuing the overnight cases would not affect the company's sales of its other product lines, its total general factory overhead, or its total purchasing department expenses. We're asked to come up with a recommendation as to whether the company should discontinue the manufacture and sale of overnight cases, and support our answer with appropriate computations. In dropping or retaining a segment in this type of a problem, we need to measure or compare what we lose on both the revenue side as well as the expense side. So we need to look at, okay, what type of contribution margin are we going to miss out on by dropping this segment? Netted out from that contribution margin will be any expenses that we would lose as a result of getting rid of this product line. So if there is still contribution margin remaining after we get rid of all the expenses, then there is some advantage to holding on to this particular product line. So when we look at this Dexter Products, if you were to look at the contribution format income statement, you will see that the company has $260,000 of contribution margin just from the sale of operating overnight cases. In addition, they have a bunch of expenses: salary of the product line manager, general factory overhead, depreciation of equipment for which it has no resale value, some advertising which is traceable, in other words it's directly related to overnight cases, insurance on the inventory, and we have some costs for running the purchasing department. We are told in the problem that the purchasing department and the general factory overhead, would still be there. Those costs would still be present in the company if they got rid of the overnight cases. So going back to our concept of relevant cost, if you're going to have general factory overhead or purchasing department costs in the alternative of keeping the overnight case product line or dropping the overnight case product line, then those costs are in both alternatives and they're therefore irrelevant, and therefore they should not be considered in the decision. It's only those costs that would be different if you dropped the overnight case product line. So when you look at this short version of determining whether or not we should drop this product line, you see that the contribution margin that would be lost if you were to discontinue the overnight cases would be $260,000. By dropping the overnight cases, you would also get rid of, you would lose the salary of the product line manager. Certainly if you're not going to have overnight cases, no sense in having a manager in charge of that product line. You would not have to spend money on advertising for that particular product line, and you would not have to insure the inventory of that particular product line. The other cost that you still would have would be the purchasing department cost, the general factory overhead costs, and the depreciation of the equipment, which has no resale value. That equipment is going to depreciate, and you can't do anything else with it. You can't even sell it. If you could sell it, well, you could use that as a reason to potentially keep or get rid of the overnight product line. In this case, this equipment will just be scrapped, and you're going to have this depreciation no matter what. So that cost is in both alternatives. So at the end of the day, when you take the fixed cost that can be avoided if the cases are discontinued, you come up with $140,000. Subtracted from your $260,000 contribution margin, you would in effect, by getting rid of the overnight case product line, you would in effect get rid of $120,000 of contribution margin. The company would be worse off by dropping that particular product line. So this is a situation where we need to look at the fixed costs that are relevant versus the contribution margin that's relevant. The difference between the two, if there's still contribution margin left over, then we have a segment that's worth keeping. If not, then it needs to be considered or to possibly drop the particular segment or product line. This does it for our discussion of exercise 1210. But before I go there, you can see down below on this solution, they show the long version of how to come up with this answer, and they basically go right down the line as to draw up an income statement as to what would be different. And you can see the net operating income or decrease. Net operating would decrease by $120,000 by dropping this particular product line. And basically they just redid what we just talked about, just took a long-term approach or longer explanation to get there. In our earlier discussion, we just looked at what would be different. Certainly either way is correct in solving the problem. This does it for our discussion of exercise 1210.